Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at two books from Titan Books that are reprints of Brian Bolland, Judge Dredd stuff written by John Wagner. I found these at Second and Charles. Me and Tori haven't been to a Second and Charles in a while, but when we moved, we took some stuff there and picked up some cool stuff, like a Judge Dredd book drawn by Brian Bolland. Story-wise, I don't really have much to say about this. I mean, it's fun sci-fi Judge Dredd stuff. And, at the time, this is like a pretty, especially having read some of the very early 2000 AD and the first issue that has Judge Dredd in it, it really stands out as being like way ahead of its time visually and in terms of narrative compared to the other stuff that was in the original 2000 ADs. I'm assuming that Judge Dredd went on to kind of set the standard for what the majority of their product looked like after a while. And when you see art like this with the Bolland stuff and just the design that Carlos Esquerza, I think is the name, came up with, it's so much cooler than anything else. But right away, both of these books are with the Judge Death character. They're introducing him as a major character in the Judge Dredd world. Again, I haven't read a bunch of that stuff, but I know that this is an important character and that the Judge Anderson that's in this one is an important character as well. I'm really enjoying these, so I do want to read a bunch more of the 2000 AD, and the scans of the early ones that I've seen online even going back to the original first issues. There's a lot of really great stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've just been sitting on this page while I'm talking, and I could pick out any one of these panels to really go on and on about this. Just such a great drawing here. It's crazy that Bolland was this good, like right out the gate, and it's crazy that his work still like looks and feels like this. He just has such a well-formed identity. And then I don't want to say he hasn't grown, but it's just he came out the gate so strong that he's been able to just be so consistent with it is impressive. And panels like this with all these cool effects, it does make you wish that he was still doing more interior work. But also, yeah, I get it. Like if I could just sit around and draw covers and get paid that money all day too, why wouldn't I? But when you see him doing things like this, where there's just huge scenes of a whole like a Olympic opening festival. You see some of the cool stuff that he's doing here with the zipatones, where he's getting this like glowing effect, this athlete that's been hitting up with steroids. And he's got dot ones, he's got linear ones, and they're kind of overlapping. There's different gradients and stuff, and it makes a really cool crackle then with this perspective burst of energy. Just some things that work really, really nice in black and white. I think for people who want to work in black and white, going and looking at some of this kind of stuff would be really influential, really informative for how to deal with, texture effects, how to deal with using dot tones in maybe less obvious ways. And then Bolland is just so good at spotting the blacks for design purposes and then nuancing them out with the gradients, by having his hatching in there. It's just a real masterclass in working in black and white for comics, so that every composition stands out super clear. Another thing that I noticed that's really interesting and really informative is that he'll often scale the hatching. So like here, he would have little tiny hatching, but here where we have a much bigger elbow pad, you'll see that he gets thicker feathered lines. I think that's really smart. It's something that I definitely have not done in my career, and I regret looking back on like some of the stuff in Strange Death and whatnot. That idea of like scaling the mark actually makes the thing feel bigger and more detailed somehow. It's just appropriate for the size. I think talking to Jim Woodring and Sean talking about him drawing things with the line scaling and working in Illustrator, where I've started seeing scaled lines, where that's a setting you want. It's making me look at artists like Bolland or Jim Lee or Brian Hitch, people who I think are probably doing that. And that's been some of why their artwork looks so big to me, and I was missing out on that trick. With Bolland, you always get too, I mean, with this like really, I don't want to say photorealistic look that he gets, not all of his stuff, but when he goes into these expressions, he's able to keep that really high realism in his art, but keep the cartooning over exaggerated look of the expressions, and then the way he's using the dot tone on here. I just think this is fantastic drawing and shows what a real savage of an artist this guy is. It's also fun to see these artists playing. They're working in black and white and they're trying different things out to see what's most effective. So here, instead of using dot tones, he's working on the duo shade board, which I'm sure most of our audience knows is a chemically treated board, and you can get like a hatch line one way and a cross hatch the other way. So he's able to get two tones out of it. And because you can paint on it, rather than like the dot tones where you'd have to scratch, you can get more like a brush look. And so I don't know if he's just playing around or if he's I mean, he's obviously mastered all of these techniques. Nothing looks like someone just trying it for the first time, or if he's like really choosing certain textures and stuff on the fly. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I know they've released some artist editions. I tried to get it, but I was never able to even figure out where to order it. But it'd be interesting to see as well, if this is even the same, if he did it, yeah, I guess it is. If it's all on one piece of board or if he's doing it on different pieces of board and cutting them together. This looks like it's probably all on the same board because it's the same texture. But I mean, wow, all of these compositions here really use that gray to great effect. And speaking of compositions, there's pages like this that like the meta composition is so great as well. You have like Judge Dredd walking down here, and the black basically becomes a tangent that turns you, there's this implied tangent here that turns you this way. And then Dredd is actually walking the opposite way. So you get him like turning the corner and heading down, but at the same time you get this guns like pointing you over here. Really great composition here with the arm pointing you down. And then this is an amazing kick. It's another one of those things that Bolland does so well, is a lot of times when people draw so realistically because they're reliant on reference, and this is something I'm guilty of in the past as well, you can't really get things that dynamic. You really just have to be able to draw from your brain, and it's obvious that Bolland can do that to get these very dynamic. And I love he's got these two kicks on here, or even if he is using reference, he's tweaking it significantly. There's a rubberiness, a bentness to that leg that's not anatomically correct, but in terms of like creating the sense of motion, it's really great. And in terms of just the negative spaces and the shapes it creates throughout the panel, it's great. So this page to me is these two pages, and especially these kicks. I especially love those kicks. Just masterclass. I could probably open to any page in the book, and it's masterclass. Then this one is a follow-up to this story, I believe. Again, not having read a ton of Judge Dredd lore, I don't know all where they fit in, but this one seems like the introduction to the character, and this one seems like the character coming back. Cool thing I noticed on this one is that the painting is done over top of pencils, so he's got all of his hatching and pencil and everything in there, and then it looks like he's probably airbrushing over top of that, which is strange because that's now such a technique that we're used to seeing in Photoshop, where people can scan in pencils with fully shaded range of values on them and either use them for screens or just color over top of them. So it's interesting to see someone kind of pushing the boundary before. This one's 91. This one's also in 1991. This would have been before we were really getting great digital colors in comics, especially stuff like this. I mean, when was what was it? Brian Haberlin and Jay Anceletto's the first one I remember with their I think it was called Aria, where he was doing those beautiful pencil drawings and their color on top. But those were like mid to late 90s. So he was doing like the physical version of that, and it's cool to see how people have then probably looked back on things like this and figured out how to recreate it in Photoshop. Super awesome drawing here. Really pure Bolland through and through, but has a lot of like H.R. Giger with the kind of rhythmic repetitions of bone and spinal shapes and stuff like that. Bolland is killing it with that. On this one, you have then, like I said, the Judge Anderson character. They basically trapped the psyche of Judge Death in her, is what they're saying. She was in the Psi division, and within her dwells the spirit of Judge Death. And she's trapped in this block of some substance called Boing. It's a miracle plastic, and it's like trapping him in her. So that's kind of the storyline of this one. Like with the other ones, I'm just more interested in the art than the story. I don't know enough about it to comment on it. Really cool designs here, kind of him doing a tryout for Ghost Rider, it looks like a little bit. Love this here, way before when they started treating Moon Knight like that with the Khonshu character. So I really like that. Seems, again, ahead of its time. and then when you see the Judge Death character with these like three horsemen of the apocalypse or whatever they are, just yeah, brilliant image here. Super cool characters. I think any kid reading this would like immediately want to go draw those guys, which when you're doing this kind of work is exactly what it is. That's the audience you're appealing to, and when you have images like this that are just so badass, like you are definitely selling straight to that audience. One thing I really like about this image is the way Bolland is using Dredd's costume, and this just shows what a great costume design it is as well, and in the hands of an artist who knows how to use these tools, really powerful. So he's using the shoulder pads here to like kick the audience down into this like eagle wing on his shoulder, and then he's having that eagle wing fan out to create some of the energy. So the energy is moving this way, and then he's bringing you up along with this line, and then the elbow pads are creating like action lines, and so is this right here. So it really creates this swooping punch motion in what could look like a fairly static pose becomes really dynamic, mostly because of how the little pieces in the costume are utilized. And I think lesser artists wouldn't have had the pieces fanning out like that. All those little touches are really smart, really beautiful. Also, you get to see, a lot of his like ship design, gun design, city design, get to see him working on explosions. It's nice to see Bolland doing these really packed scenes like this, because so much of me growing up was growing up with him already as a cover artist or someone who would do like 8 pages for Batman Black and White or something. It's really nice to dig into, wow, this guy had a pretty significant like sequential career before all of that. And it really makes me want to go back and dig up like everything that Bolland did. I know like the first thing I've read of his, the earliest thing I've read, and I haven't read it in a long time, was the 2000, 3000, whatever that was, Camelot 3000. And I'd have to go back and look at that. I remember it being in color and not being as impressed by it at the time. Really like this Father Earth character that comes in here. He's like this strange holy man. He's got flowers growing all over him and like some little mushroom twigs poking out. I feel like this is where me and Tori are headed now that we're out in the woods communing with our fairy circle and our beautiful land. But it doesn't seem like the worst thing to turn into. Noticing the earlier like potential Ghost Rider tryout, it's really hard not to see this as a tryout for Superman. We've got a reporter here that's on the TV doing a reporter. He's not a news reporter for the paper, but it's pretty hard not to see the little Superman S and the big glasses and everything. Here they're talking about an election or something, but that to me feels like Brian Bolland doing his tryout. Again, I don't know the timeline of when he got picked up from this and brought over to do Camelot 3000, but it seems like he's throwing some stuff out there that he could show to other people. Then this volume ends with Ron Smith taking over the art for the last chapter here, still based on John Howard's script. And that is not an act I would want to follow. Would not want to follow Bolland on a story that Bolland, it'd be fine to do Judge Dredd, but on a story that Bolland was the artist for all the other strips, that would be intimidating to me. But Ron Smith, that's such a bland name, unfortunately, a common name. I don't know I'd be able to find much on him, but did a good job. It ain't quite Bolland, but and that's not a diss on it. It's just he's got his own different style, and it's also pretty awesome and pretty effective. A little bit more cartoony, but a lot of the nice details. Oh, he did 2 episodes here at the end. So I'll have to look up more of Ron Smith. I feel like when I'm looking at these early 2000 ADs that I've seen scans of, there's a bunch of artists that I've never even heard their name that are amazing artists, or I've heard their name like doing a comic strip or something like that, but I didn't know that they did significant work in this kind of format. And that's why I want to dig into that. It's like, oh man, there's this whole kind of lineage of this photorealistic type of stuff that I really still like, even though I'm not doing it anymore over in England, that I'm not even exposed to, and I'm barely exposed to most of the American people that were working, just whatever I came across in working on Strange Death. And seeing this whole other legacy, a lot of this stuff feels very based in a lot of these guys, especially Bolland, seems like a continuation of the Hal Foster, what Dave Sim would call it, the Hal Foster school. of realism, with the more like cross-contoured hatch lines, the more well-defined contours along the edges, just the way the lines work. This seems to be in that kind of lineage, the more precise illustrative kind of work. So it's really nice to see like that lineage continue and flourish and burgeon. And you see Bolland, and then you saw someone like Chris Weston. You kind of see that go on, and I'm realizing there's a lot more artists who have amazing imaginations in that realm. And I'm very excited to find more work by them. I know a lot of it's out of print, but anytime I can stumble upon something like this that I could get that shows me, and these are well printed, that's really crispy art. They're beautiful editions. So if you ever find these around, I would highly recommend picking them up. I need to check out some of the Rebellion reprints of the 2000 AD stuff. We saw some a couple years ago at San Diego, so I know they're doing collections, but that's just so much stuff, and trying to spend less money now that we've got a property. I just don't know when, if I'll ever get to that. But yeah, really excited to find these, and I hope you guys enjoyed that peek into Brian Bolland's Judge Dredd work. The Eisner nominated The Strange Death of Alex Raymond by Dave Sim and myself. This is a gorgeously illustrated and designed book. Dave doing most of the illustration. Amazing compositions throughout. What Dave is doing is he's recording his obsession with the death of master cartoonist Alex Raymond behind the wheel of Stan Drake's car when they got into a car crash. The best description of the book that I've heard is that it's like understanding comics with pages like this, mixed with something like From Hell, when you get into the theories about what actually happened with the car crash. And then with Sean on production, it's just one of the most gorgeously printed books you could get a hold of.